9 o'clock. I'll call the meeting to order. Was there any for open forum, Lindsay?
None received.
Okay. And I've got to pull the sheet here. I have moved by Barb and seconded by Michael the confirmation of the agenda. Any discussion on that? Anyone opposed to that? Okay, that's passed. Anyone has a declaration of pecuniary interest, declare now or at any time. I have a motion moved by Jason, seconded by Martin, that we move into committee of the whole at 9:01. Any discussion on that? Anyone opposed to it? Okay, and that's passed. Moved by Brian and seconded by Jim that we appoint chair. So
John Woodbury.
I second it.
All in favor?
Yeah, that looked like. You didn't even have to look up. Anyone opposed or want discussion, or anybody have any other ideas? Okay, that is passed. Next, we have the motion for reconsiderations for the budget. Oh no, considerations for the budget. Moved by Barbara and seconded by Michael. And I will turn that over to Liam then.
There's the button. Okay. All right. So just a summary for where we left off on November 24th. So the budget for capital was received, requiring a $2,304,139, which was a $248,000 increase, which was estimated to have a 2.05% impact. However, this budget has, based on the discussions at that meeting about deferring some of the capital bills in 2021, as well as reflecting the new estimate of the blended tax rate increase of $130,000, $353, assuming a 2% increase in the county tax rate and 1% decrease in the education tax rate. That is my new estimate for a 1% blended tax rate increase impact. So in order to change the blended tax rate impact, you'd have to, if you want a 1% decrease, you'd have to remove $130,000 from the budget. So reflecting those changes on the capital, the requirement for capital is now $2,270,039, increase of $214,000, which reflecting my 2021 blended tax rate impact estimates. Remember, my previous estimate was based on the 2020. The capital is a 0.8% impact on the blended tax rate rather than 2.05. So bringing that in, is there a question on that?
Barb? No? Okay.
I'll wait till you're finished.
Okay.
So bringing that into the operating budget, which is provided as attachment 1, the overall 2021 budget then would have a requirement for taxation of $8,101,621, an increase of $516,917, which is $516,000 is broken out between $302,000 for operating and $214,000 for capital. So that's a combined 2.4% increase in the blended tax rate. So 1.6 for operating and 0.6 for capital. So given that the discussions at the last meeting were, the targets by various members were between 0 and 3%. So since what we're presenting is already at 2.4, I'm just showing that if council wishes to reduce that even further, one method would be to use a tax stabilization reserve. And I've just shown scenarios there for how much would have to be taken from the tax stabilization to bring that down to 2%, 1%, or 0. with the caution that any decrease in use of tax stabilization does increase the pressure on future years' taxation requirements. So, having that overall summary, I shall go to attachment 1, if I can get rid of this bar. All right, so the first page of attachment 1 shows basically the numbers I've just quoted. The one number that I want to point out is the growth number for 2020, because now we have received the MPAC's estimate of 2020 growth report, which was why I was able to calculate a 2021 estimated blended tax rate increase. The growth for 2020 was 266,598. And the budget anticipated growth of 252,279. So I was off of my estimate by 14,319. So one of the reasons why the blended tax rate increase is lower is due to that growth. So that 266, now that we have that in assessment, we have that to cover 266,598 of the $516,000 increase. So that's why to recover the additional 250,000, that's what we have to increase the blended tax rate in order to recover additional $250,000. So, and you'll just see here. Was there a question? No? Okay. So I've just shown there my estimate of revenue neutrals being 0.76 for Southgate, and County of Grey in education, as I said, is I've assumed a 2% increase for Grey and a 1% decrease for education. We won't know those values probably until January, February, I would think. January at the earliest, February at the latest, I would estimate. So going down to the major impacts of that increase, or the changes from budget year to year. So I've presented again, these are the most significant impacts. There are lots of other minor impacts that I've sort of all summarized into other operational adjustments. So I've broken it out between uncontrollable and controllable at this point. So uncontrollable is that council's approved the 0.7% COLA increase. That's a $22,000 impact. The economic development officer position has been left vacant, so that's $68,000 decrease. The crossing guard complement is there a question?
Go ahead, Barb.
Liam, it says the 2021 budget, but we are talking or have talked about hiring an economic development officer or putting in place an economic development department. So yes. I understand that the economic development would be decreased in 2020 because we didn't fill that position. But how is it already a decrease next year? Because we're talking about the impacts of next year, right?
We're talking about the impacts from the 2020 budget to the 2021 budget. So in the 2020 budget, there was $68,000 for wage costs for that position. That is technically not in the 2021 budget because that position is vacant and hasn't been filled yet. You'll see down in the controllable costs, though, is the fact that the staff is proposing the hiring of a industrial land position, wages for $73,000. So it's uncontrollable. It's because council's already made the decision to leave the position vacant, so that saves $68,000. Council has not made the decision to rehire, which would cost $73,000. So that's why it's broken out between controllable and uncontrollable at this point. As soon as council makes a decision to actually hire, then that 73,000 would become a uncontrollable cost.
Okay,
That makes sense?
sure.
Okay. So, and then the crossing guards, we've doubled our crossing guards, so it's about $8,000 for wages for that position. General insurance, reported to council about the 25% increase there, so that's about $28,000 in here. The OPP contract, we've got the notice on that, and that's a $26,000 increase. So that's a net $16,000 uncontrollable increase in costs. And what's controllable at this point is the wage cost for the merit increases. It's about $64,000 in this budget, because there's going to be a report coming to council on December 16th to consider that. So at this point, it's controllable. Once council makes that decision, it will either be removed or move to the uncontrollable. Again, the industrial land FTE that we just talked about as the decision has not been made on that to hire. And Public Works has loaded some additional FTEs to increase the service level in that department for being the taps brush operator, the waste team leader, and increase the summer and winter seasonal FTE positions. And the Public Works manager is estimated to be about $148,000 for that impact. So that is a combined $285,000 of wages that's controllable as of this point in time. And then Property Standards has decreased their legal budget by $49,000. Planning fees has decreased their revenues by $41,000. And then the capital was $214,000 as mentioned, and then everything else nets to $9,700. So there are some obviously a lot of other line items that have gone up and gone down, but on a net basis it's about $9,700, and I believe I've captured the more significant changes on this schedule. So that brings it to $500,000 of controllable, which is a combined $516,000 increase overall. And then the analysis to the right just shows what that is. The ratio is as far as the dollar levy is concerned, and then in relation to the blended tax rate. So if there are no current questions, I'll just go on.
If I could, Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Go ahead, Brian.
Liam, I wonder if you... It wasn't entirely clear to me, and it didn't sound like it was entirely clear to Councillor DeBreen either. Could you expand on that economic development thing again? Where did the industrial land, what is the intent there? Why isn't it simply economic development officer? Or maybe Dave could speak to that, I don't know. It seems kind of odd.
Well, I will speak briefly and then Dave can speak further. In the 2020 budget, in the economic development department, there was $68,000 of labor. And in 2021, the CAO loaded $73,000 of wages into industrial land rather than economic development. There are two different departments within the town. So there's $68,000 in the 2020 budget for an economic development FTE, and there's $73,000 in the 2021 budget for an industrial land FTE.
Right. Okay. So I guess my question then is, what's the intent of the industrial land FTE?
And that would be a question for Dave.
So I would say that's something we have to adjust because that was not the intent. It's obviously got into the wrong bucket. It still needs to be an economic development officer.
So
we'll fix that. It's
just
obviously correct. It's going to be an economic development officer 7 days a week.
Okay. All right. I understand now. Thank you.
Question here, John. Mark.
Sure, go ahead.
So going back to this again, if it's budgeted for 2021, will it be a $73,000 wage for the economic development officer or 68?
Maybe I'll answer that. And that's a discussion in itself.
Okay.
Do we really, the 73,000 is to put in, inflationary piece to it, and that will be also benefits, I believe, is that part as well. So my point is that I think this is a good discussion. What is the right time of year to hire this person? Do we need them yet because of
You're breaking
COVID?
up a bit there too, Dave.
Okay, maybe it's my link, but anyway, I think we need to, do we hire in the first quarter or the second quarter? When would they be most impactful based on COVID, us coming out of COVID? Maybe we can wait till July, but that's another discussion. This is budgeting for the fact that we'd have them for the whole 12 months.
Okay. Barb?
Through the chair, so I still have math balance questions. We haven't actually decreased any costs because we don't have that position in the budget for 2021. If you subtract the 68,000 and you add back 73,000, that's only $5,000. Like, I guess I'm not seeing the debit and credit.
Net result is the 68 was in the 2020 budget. So it moved forward into the 2021 budget. And so Liam is showing a debit of 68 and a credit of 73 to reflect.
So it would have been there had the position been filled, but it's not filled yet.
Correct.
Correct. I think I got it. Thanks.
What we're looking at is a net $5,000 increase in budget for an economic development officer. Call it what we will.
And personally, I think that might be light because you're going from a part-time to a full-time. But I don't know what the market is for economic development officers for now. So
I hear they work cheap.
Okay. About 73,000. The same as Okay. Phone's on. Okay, Liam.
Okay, so just moving down to, so the next page is just showing the requirement from taxation by department. I've highlighted the major impacts up above. And I think, and then so page 5, starting on page 5, puts it in the format that you've been seeing it in the monthly financial reports. So you can just sort of see it in the same format as you've been seeing it monthly. And then starting on page 8, just shows, again, it just gets further into detail and shows the actual activities within each of the areas. So, given the impact, I'll just go back up to there. So, the major changes from year to year are summarized on page 2 of 36. So, I thought it wasn't necessarily a requirement to go department by department, considering where the significant changes are, unless council wishes to do so. So I'm thinking we just open up to the questions.
Okay. Hi. Michael.
I'm looking at one of the biggest heavy hitters is the road department. I'm just kind of wanting a breakdown of it because we'll find the right page here. I think it was $459,000 more than last year. Roads. Yeah, $479,146 more than last year. So I'm just kind of wondering why we're going to a budget of just a little over 4 million versus 3.6. I'm just kind of wondering. We're looking for savings. I'm just kind of wondering what all that consists of.
So I'm thinking as a starting point, I think I want to go to page 4 of 36. Which shows the roads department broken out between operating and capital. So just the capital component was $188,900 of that, and $290,000 was operating, of which $148,000 was due to an increase in FTEs.
So that'll be in the cap. Was that in the capital, or is that the 145 is in the 290?
No, the 145 FTE is in the 290.
Little question I have, Mr. Chair, if I might. Okay, thanks. My internet's getting a little wonky here, but so if the full FTEs is accounting for about half of the operating increase, have we allowed enough operating budget to cover, I suppose, the FTEs? Does that make any sense?
Is Jim on the call? I see his name.
Yep. Well, he was.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
go ahead.
they were plugged in at various
Yep, go
different tasks to that they would be aligned to do.
Okay, all right, thank you. But I would think the most of that, if I could, the most of that would be the additional brusher, like the full-time person on the brushing machine.
Yeah, I believe that's reflected in tree cutting.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Through the chair, comment on this. Okay.
The section with planning, Liam, it went up to, difference there was 40,789. Is that because of all the different planning things we have to do through the consultants and what the government wants? Was that increase there?
Page.
Oh, still on page 4, sorry.
Okay.
The planning, 17,000, and in 2021 it's 58 for a variance of $40,800. Does that include? Is that included the consultants, legal fees? What's that increase there? I guess if Chris is on, Clinton's on the line, he can answer that. I guess through the chair or someone.
I can answer that.
Thank you, Clinton.
I think John's frozen there, so. Anyways, the main reason for the increase or decrease, if you remember, Liam said at the beginning there that I was expecting a reduction in the amount of revenues. And
Okay, go ahead.
so the previous person who was doing the budget overestimated the amount of revenues that we would receive for 2020. We never actually achieved all of those revenues that came in. So what I did is I brought it down to a more realistic level of what I thought the revenues and applications were that were going to come in. So it's a guesstimate on my part of what I thought was going to come in. And so that's why there's a decrease, because the other estimate previously was too high.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I think John is having issues with his technology.
Well, John tries to come back. I just got a question for Clint. Is there any of that parts of your budget that are for external consultants?
Yes, we have proposed to take some money out of reserves and use those for external consultants in the new year.
Okay, that was my point. I just wanted to make sure we did pull out a reserve to cover those costs, because that was something we did in past years to take that bump out if we needed that service.
Yeah, there's about, I think it's actually about 85,000 that was taken out if I'm...
Okay, good, thank you. It looks like John's.
Yeah. Yeah, my audio's cutting in and out the microphone, so I don't know what's up. Any other questions or comments? Michael?
I'm looking at page 16 of 36. And, third way down the page, the account number equipment maintenance. Actual in 2019 was 270,000. Actual budget for 2020 was 400,000. Projected to be 452,000. And now we're looking at a budget for 2021 for $609,000, so an increase of $208,000. It seems like a big increase for maintenance in 1 year, $200,000.
I'll just clarify, that's where the bulk of the capital transfer happens in that activity. So the major increase is a transfer to the capital fund.
I don't get it.
So if I might, I wonder, Liam, when you label that as equipment maintenance, you're meaning to maintain the fleet, as opposed to oil changes and tire changes. Is that what would that be a fair assumption?
Yeah, that's to maintain the fleet, the operating costs, and because the transfer to capital is an operating cost. So
Right.
on the capital side, there's more requirement for taxation required for equipment. So that's why that number is higher.
Right.
Okay. Is that,
Can we,
does that help,
can
Mike?
we,
That doesn't
can we
make sense.
break, well, yeah, I'd have to agree. I think, can we break that out more granular, that we can see exactly what equipment maintenance would be and what equipment capital contribution would be in another bucket? I'm sure in greater detail down further it will show that, but I think on this type of a summary, it would be more efficient to break it out.
Well, it's a little bit misleading to think that, there's, Michael's right. I mean, that
That's
much
right.
oil changes increases a pretty big jump.
Sounds like we need to update the fleet from that number.
Maybe.
So I just put on screen the detail of the 2560 activity, which I'll highlight that row there. So that highlighted row, 2560, 7500, transfer to capital. 2019 actual was 260, budget was 394, projected is 446, and 2021 budget is 602,000. So that is the capital piece that has been discussed at previous meetings. And the other lines are the operating, like oil changes and things like that.
Yeah, just like when it's in capital, when we're buying a new piece of equipment and then it shows up in the operating, it seems like we're double dipping. That's all I'm worried about, that for some reason it's in two buckets, which it shouldn't be in two buckets. So I just thinking there was 200,000 there that we're missing.
Barbara?
I tend to agree. The total on the page 16 of 36 is 609,280, and you're showing 602, but that adds in the 3,500 and the 3,780, which is actual maintenance. Is like there's $7,000, which would be the actual maintenance of the fleet, like the oil changes. I mean, a set of tires can cost that, but or more. Is that correct, Liam?
Equipment maintenance is for all the small equipment. So yes,
Right.
So it is $7,000 for maintenance costs for all the small equipment. The larger pieces have their own activity.
Okay, and I guess I have to agree with Michael. It's a little confusing because we're buying the equipment, and then there's $602,000 in operating expense of the larger pieces of equipment. But you're saying it's a transfer to capital.
Capital has to be funded from operations. So operations pays $602,000 to the capital fund. So what's being presented today is Fund 1, which is the overall requirement from taxation, which for this activity has a transfer to capital of $602,000.
And
sorry?
So from the $602,000, we're going to purchase a grader or a roll-off truck or...
Yes, whatever was in the capital discussions.
So it still sounds like we're accounting for it twice.
Dave has some insight for it.
So let's say we're going to buy something. It's $500,000. It has to be funded. Capital money comes out of either two places. Operations transfers to capital. So let's say we want to buy that $500,000 item. We'll put $400,000 into it from capital. From operations to reserves, we'll do a capital contribution. And that accounts for the money going into capital. And then we'll pull maybe $100,000 out of reserves to fund that $500,000 purchase. But all money that flows to capital has to come from somewhere, and it's one of those two places. I mean, the third place, if somebody wants to donate money, we'll take a donation. But anyway, so operations funds capital and it funds reserves. And that's how we pay for capital items. Either by taking money from the past or money from this year to buy that item.
Okay. Any other questions?
I might add a comment. So
Okay.
Just on that, for this equipment maintenance transfer to capital, that specific line is a 52% increase. But other transfer to capital lines are lower in order for the roads overall to come to a net 15% increase that was discussed at the last meeting.
Okay. Yeah. Well, judging from Michael's
I have a
camera.
question, John.
Okay, Brian. Brian, go ahead.
Or were you concerned about Michael? Where'd he go to?
Well, yeah. Well, that's what I was wondering. It was too much for him. It just knocked him out. But no.
Oh, there he is.
Yep. So go ahead.
There he is. All right. That's good. Page 26 of 36. Under health services, I note the net cost if you will, for Dundalk doctor recruitment is budgeted at $52,950 for 2021. Surely there must be more in that line than just simply doctor recruitment. Can you help me with that, Liam, please?
So yeah, that line should be renamed. That's actually the medical clinic contribution to reserves. It used to be used for the Dundalk doctor recruitment. Now and because it wasn't used, I repurposed it for the Dundalk medical clinic, and I missed renaming that line.
Okay, no, that's fine.
Again, that's
and
the line that was discussed in the capital presentation as well.
Okay.
Great. Thank you for that. In addition to that, just below there is cemetery. And I presume that is the Dundalk Cemetery? Or is that our newfound cemetery in the West End?
That is the Dundalk Maple Grove Cemetery. That's the only cemetery we have that we operate.
So, right, okay. I was just sort of, yeah, all right. It shows zero revenues there. I'm wondering, although I see, below, it shows Fund 5 cemetery, but what are the numbers directly, like the revenues, expenses, and then net?
So, first I'll clarify accounting. When the township amalgamated, the Dundalk Cemetery came in as a Fund 5.
Okay.
So Fund 1 funds Fund 5. So you see in Fund 1, the 22,575 gets repeated in Fund 5 as a revenue of 22,575.
Under administration, I see. Okay.
Yes. So that's a legacy presentation issue.
Right. And is there a time frame to clean up some of these legacy things?
The answer is yes. My plan is to revamp the GL, hopefully for 2021, but I thought for the budget purposes, because I haven't completely finished that project, that's presented in the format that it's been traditionally presented, and then I can restate it into the new format.
Excellent. Okay, thank you.
Yep, that would be good. Barb.
So talking about cemetery, since we're on it, and Deputy Mayor Milne's question about the cemetery in the West End, that any expense or any support of that cemetery, because we just passed an agreement to support them, would come out of the Southgate Solar Fund or donations or capital, not operational?
So through the chair, if I might, donations is in the finance department, so that's not showing as cemetery. Again, the cemetery presented here is just our cemetery. Any support for other organizations that's hosting cemetery is not our organization. Right. So that is a donation showing in the finance department, and I believe in the finance department I show a $30,000 donation as well as $30,000 from reserves.
Okay, can I just say point of privilege, and maybe we could go from page to page sequentially, because we're bouncing back and forth and it's leading to other questions, and I'm just wondering if council would, the committee of the whole would consider just going page by page, maybe make it easier for Liam, and some questions may get answered as we, instead of bouncing back and asking you, what page is that on?
Okay. Is that anyone against that idea? We don't need to go line by line, but we can ask if there's any questions or comments on each page. Okay. So where should we start? Liam?
Well, the detail begins on what page is? Page 8 is general taxation. So
okay.
Let's start on page 8, and then I think we'll probably quickly go down from there.
Okay, good. Any questions or comments on page 8?
So I'm not hearing anything. I'll just summarize what this section is. This is the upper tier, lower tier, and school board taxations. Both
Yeah.
regular taxation as well as pills and supplementals,
Okay.
which essentially is a result of all the other departments that require funds.
Okay. All right. Not hearing anything. Oh, Barbara? No? Okay.
All right. So
Maybe. Hands up again. Barbara?
No, we're getting to page 9. I'll just put
Okay.
my hand up for you.
Okay.
So-
Page 9.
page 9 is it's traditionally administration, but now it's administration, finance, and clerks. It's been, because those 3 departments have been broken out. However, for the current presentation, they're still under the same umbrella. So that's finance, clerks, and administration CAO.
Okay. Not hearing anything on that one, or Barb, do you have something? Yep, go ahead.
Thank you through the chair. So under revenues for officiant services 2020, we had an annual budget of 1,000. I'm sure that there were some weddings in the year that that someone officiated at. And was there no fee collected for any of those? I noticed that the clerk is projecting $225. And associated with that, so I think the clerk and the CAO officiate weddings. The expenses, they must have some expenses, like mileage or, I don't know. I don't know what kind of expenses you would come up against, but the CAO officiated a wedding. I don't know if the clerk did. And it doesn't look like there's any revenues projected for 2020. Is $1,000 for 2021 realistic for revenues, and where are the associated expenses?
Dave?
So the previous clerk did a fair few weddings, and she looked at it as a revenue for herself as well as for the township. Not all employees that do weddings charge anything to the people for the officiant services, and it doesn't go through the township. So it's all a choice whether they want to look at it as a wage source or not. But the previous clerk did that, and that was her choice. We don't project a lot of this in any year, and it's really kind of minimal. So some charge expenses and some don't charge.
Okay.
We leave it.
All right. Thanks.
Okay. Anything else on that page? Okay, we can move on to the next page, which would be 10.
So page 10 has, first line is, section is council.
Barbara?
Through the chair, so under senior committee, we are looking at a budget of $1,840. Are they planning a healthcare fair? Because generally they had an annual budget of about $500, as did YAC, and I don't see YAC specifically mentioned anywhere in the budget. It used to be under library, and I thought that was going to be transferred to recreation. So first question is, why the jump from 500 to 1,840 in 2021 for the seniors committee? I know it's a small item, but it stood out.
Okay. I don't know whether Liam or Dave.
Yeah, I mean, I think that just reflects, we have been a bit light on specifically that committee in the past, so the
I agree.
1840, I think 1840 better reflects what their future efforts, and who knows with COVID this year, where that will get, but at least I think if they do get going, that would cover some of that health fair efforts that they're trying to do.
Thank you.
This comment, if I might, in 2019, the cost was $2,700 compared to a $500 budget. So the 1840 is closer to the 2019 actual 27,000 than the budget was.
Okay. Any other questions on that page? Okay. Page 11.
So before we move on, that was transit. I'm assuming there's no questions on transit. That's just the smart payment there, that increase.
Yep.
And then I guess sort of you have to look at 11 and 12 combined here for protection, which has fire. Fire is the end of page 10 and the beginning of page 11.
Okay. I'm hearing a lot of quiet, so
The next section would be police, which I've reported the increase there is the OPP contract.
Michael has a question.
Oh, Michael, go ahead.
I just wondering on fire, it was 136 less than budgeted. So I'm just kind of wondering why the projection was down on that one. On fire.
Is the fire chief with us?
Yeah, whereabouts are you looking here, Michael?
I'm looking at page 11. If you look at the totals, it says the annual budget was 564, projected 428. So the debt was 136,000 saving, but then now you're looking at a budget of 566 again. So I'm just kind of wondering, is there money there somewhere that, why you were under by 136,000? Good job.
So we're under budget. The FPO didn't start until October, so we missed the first 10 months of wages for him, as well as now that we're bringing our numbers up. So now we have 31 firefighters on staff. Now we got to start paying for them at scenes as well. So it's going to be a little bit of an increased cost. But we also like to have that little bit of a cushion space because we can't really predict how many emergency calls we're going to be at and how long these calls are going to be. So.
Yep, sounds good. Thank you.
Good. Jeff? You got a question, Jim?
I mean, there's nothing in here. Yeah, there's nothing in here for a deputy chief. Is that a position that's going to be abandoned? Not a good idea to let that go.
Yeah.
If I'll interrupt, that's a presentation. And all the fire operations are in their 2010 Southgate Fire Operations. The deputy chief was created in the GL a while ago when there was I believe there's a contract when I believe it was John Thompson left and Don.
Okay.
What was that
Any other-
response?
The deputy chief activity isn't used. It's all consolidated into one now. There is a deputy chief in this budget.
There's nothing shown on my sheet.
It's in Southgate Fire Department Operations 2010. It's in the wages in there.
But Jim is looking at the line 012012, and
Yeah.
there's nothing in that line.
So the way I take it, that's a column not being used anymore, and the deputy chief wages are in with the rest of the wages for the fire department. Is that the gist of it, William?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
position's still there. It's just in a different account. Okay.
Martin here.
Yep, go ahead, Martin.
Yeah, Liam, going back to page 10 regarding the regional transit, you said that was the Saugeen Mobility?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, okay. With the other county initiative for the transit, that was mainly all grants, or is there a portion of money that we pay into that? Where's that in here, or is that involved in something else too? Because we do pay a percentage of that, don't we? Where would that be?
You'll see in the 2020 projections is $74,000 compared to a budget of $27,000. The grant.
Okay.
Well, actually, you see in the revenues, you see 41,325 projected, and that is also projected revenue because that's the grant money we received, and then the expense is us passing it on to the county. So it's in and out in the 2020 projections.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anything else on the fire?
Maybe, John, just back to regional transit. I think we should, for clarity in the future, break that out into SMART and GTA, or whatever we call it, the Great County Transit piece, because we're going to see more of that in the future.
Okay, yeah.
Well, we may or may not.
All right. That's a really good point. But for the present time, at least 2021, and yeah, you're exactly correct, Deputy Milne. It will evolve. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Make sure that statement by the CEO gets into the minutes that I'm correct.
That's why we
no comment. No comment.
It doesn't happen often, so I like to savor it.
We'll see if we can get it on playback for you. Any other questions about the policing or transit? Okay, let's move on. Or fire or transit. Move on to policing. And the one thing is police services board out separate because they are separate entities.
The township's policing activity is OPP and Police Services Board together.
It should not be together. Two separate entities. I've told you that more than once before, Liam.
Okay. Barbara?
Through the chair, under revenues, protective inspections, what would that encompass? Because you're projecting 609,000 in 2020, and then budgeting less in 2021.
A little bit. So we need to talk about conservation before we talk about protective services.
Oh, sorry. I heard you moved on to page 12, so I was just backtracking.
Yeah, we're just going on to policing. Anything else on policing?
I've got a lot on policing, but I'll wait till near the end.
Okay. Well, we're on it now. We could deal with anything now, Jim.
Okay, fair enough. I have mentioned to Liam more than once before that the Police Service Board is not a part of the police department. The OPP and the board are two entirely separate things, and they cannot be lumped together. And I've mentioned this more than once before. I have a sheet here that it took me a while to get it from Liam. There's a number of items in here, and it's hard to say which is which. We have police wages. Police.
You're breaking up, Jim.
Try again. Maybe Liam can answer the questions. Police surplus previous year. Is that OPP of the board?
That is the OPP.
the police miscellaneous revenue, is that board or OPP?
OPP.
Pride program, provincial grant, that's OPP, obviously. Police wages, OPP or board?
Board.
Police benefits, OPP or board?
Board.
Police payment and lieu,
Board.
police cleaning and maintenance,
OPP.
correct. Police utilities,
OPP.
police materials,
I believe the board approved a purchase by the OPP, so I'm not sure if that's I guess that's a board cost because the board agreed to pay the OPP extra for some equipment. No?
no, that's a council matter with the OPP, not the boards. Membership, conferences, mileage, that's all board.
Yes.
Police telephone,
OPP.
correct. Police miscellaneous expenses,
That would be the board.
okay. And police OPP contract fees and the police rate, that's both OPP. But anyone else looking at that wouldn't know what the hell it is. It's a bloody dog's breakfast. You're going to have to separate it and identify it. It has to be a completely separate item from the police department.
And that's the plan in the new GL format is to clarify those into two different areas.
Okay.
Sorry, what's that?
That in the new GL format that I'm developing, it is to have one for police service board and one for OPP, rather than this legacy single police services area.
I talked to you about this more than a couple of years ago. You still haven't got it done. Anyone looking at this wouldn't know what the hell it is.
Point of privilege.
I'll leave it with you.
Yeah, go ahead, Barbara.
Mr. Chair, I believe our treasurer has explained it in that he is in the development stages of revamping the general ledger. He just hasn't finished it quite yet and hopes to release that. And that will address Councillor Frew's concerns about having the OPP police line and the police services board separate, if I'm not mistaken. It's a timing thing. Liam is working on it, and he should be given time to present that in the next year.
Yeah, okay.
With all due respect, this matter was brought up with Liam many years ago. The opportunity then to get it sorted out.
Okay, Dave had something?
Yeah, let's take, Liam and I will take this offline, and we've heard your comments, Councillor Frew, and we'll find a way to get this done sooner rather than later.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions on policing? Okay, Conservation Authority. Any questions on that?
I have a question, Mr. Chair. Have we seen the Conservation Authority's budget for 2021 yet, and what their increase is, or what it's being proposed at? Councillor DeBreen, do you have that?
My understanding is that the draft budget was sent to staff. I don't believe that it has actually hit a council agenda as yet. Liam does have it. The actual increase that the Conservation Authority put forward was draft 1.6%, but because it's based on each municipality is weighted differently, our increase ends up being 5.8% due to the municipal assessment of property, among other things. So it was, Liam, if you have not received it, please let me know, because it should have been sent out already and open for comment from staff.
It has been received and reflected in these numbers, and it's going to be on Council's December 16th agenda.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Liam. Thank you, Councillor DeBreen.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments on Conservation Authority? Okay, we can move on to the next one.
Building is over page 11 and 12.
Okay. Any questions on building?
So I believe Councilor Green had questions regarding the permit fees.
Okay.
Thank you. Through the chair to Liam, under protective inspections, I mean, obviously our revenues are significantly higher than we anticipated in 2020, and we're looking at slightly more than what we budgeted for in 2020. Protective inspections, what would that include?
I believe the CBO is in the meeting, so I'll let him address that.
Okay, Bev?
Is it just building inspections, or does that include property standards, bylaw enforcement, or is that a separate line?
Yeah. Bev's going to answer that.
Thank you.
I'm afraid I would have to refer to Liam to see if he's tracking it separately or not. I know it's in a separate budget, the bylaw, but I'm not sure whether it shows up. I believe, though, that is our fees for building permits. By the look of the numbers, to me, I don't have them exactly in my head, but I would say that's what that is.
Actually, on page 12, I do notice a property standards line, so that is separately, which I'll get to on page 12.
Yeah, just to clarify, the 2040 is just building permit fee revenue. Property standards is another area.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions on this section? Barb?
Because it's part of building, and there was an estimate at the beginning that we're proposing a reduction in legal fees. Is that, so the legal fees with regard to, I guess, bylaw enforcement, it falls under building. Is that captured separately then, Liam? And is that wise given the number of outstanding property standards complaints that we're hoping to address in 2021 that could in fact take us to court?
So just to clarify, if I may, through the chair, so the section 2040, and I also noticed there's a label update that should happen too. 241 is one vehicle, 242 is another vehicle, and 245 is going to be the proposed new vehicle. So those names should be updated to unit numbers, and that is just building. The legal reduction that I commented at the start, that's property standards, which is the following section on, which is activity 2080 called property standards. But it's 3/4 of the way down page 12.
Okay, so we're not there yet. Okay.
Okay. Any other questions or comments on the building section?
I get one, John.
Yep, go ahead, Jim.
There's an item in the 2021 budget, 3,500 for septic inspections. Is that for existing septics or new ones?
As I just mentioned, it's not septic inspections, it's actually a vehicle. The line name should be a unit number. So 241, 242, and 245 were all vehicles, not a CBO contract or a septic inspection. I've repurposed previously used activities for the new vehicles since we didn't have those in our previous building department.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? Okay, we can move along. So is that any other questions on page 12 there at all? We can move on to roads or transportation. Oh, Barb.
I think Liam was going to speak to property standards since Bev is still here, and that's on page 12.
Okay.
So I'll just say that decrease in legal budget for legal shows up in the property standards line 2080, the net decrease of $38,000 of expenses. And I believe Councilor Green's question was that wise to reduce the budget. I'm of the opinion that we probably shouldn't over budget for legal, and if we incur it, we could take it from the tax stabilization reserve as a one-time unusual cost, unless legal fees become a standard level every year.
Okay. Yeah, I think to your point is we've been fortunate, but with the increased number of complaints coming into the bylaw enforcement property standards, with more people sitting at home and watching their neighbors or staying local, I understand what you're saying is that the money is there if we need it, but let's not over budget for it now. Thank you.
Okay. So if there's no more on that, let's move on to transportation. Any questions on page 13? Michael?
Just kind of wondering where the revenue is coming from. I see road revenue of 12,000, or that was in 8,600. And then we have some revenue from a gravel pit. And then we have snow plowing for 3,500. I'm just kind of wondering where this revenue is coming from.
Okay, Liam? Or do you want, is Jim?
Jim?
Okay, Jim, go ahead.
Some of the revenue for snow plowing comes from an agreement we have over there with North Wellington, and that's a piece of their road there by London Road and Sligo that we do that's actually paid from Wellington County, so we get that check from them once a year for doing that loop as we're in the area anyways. There's some other one-offs with doing some possible grading here or there that's requested for someone that we will schedule in. I'd have to look back at what some of the other line items were that were suggested there.
So gravel pits is the revenue we get from the province collects a gravel levy and then passes on a piece to the township, and that goes into gravel pits.
Is that the so-called torque fees, Liam?
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
So the money that we get for plowing Flato up here, like the new subdivisions until we take over, where does that revenue show up?
Yeah, that'll be charged and come in through snow plowing also.
Okay. Any other questions on page 13?
We also get, for downtown snow removal, reimbursement through the county too for a portion of moving their snow on the county road on Main Street.
Okay. Barbara?
I'm sorry, mine will be for the department, but not till page 15. Getting ahead of myself.
Yep. Okay. So how about page 14? There's only the one item on it. Any question on that? Okay, and 15. Hey, Barb, do you have a question about 15?
Oh, It's more of an overall for the roads budget with all of the, with us asking all of the departments to cut back and bring the budget down to, within around that 2%. Have we cut anything to this through you to Jim? Have we cut anything that you would be grossly concerned about? Are we cutting to the point of foregoing any critical work or supply that you would caution council on?
Not at this point. We've loaded it. It hasn't been altered since the first get-go.
Okay.
We have provided a report that's coming along with this presentation that there are options in the capital side of considerations that we could. There's timing issues that may not happen, so we can discuss them back when we pull that report.
Okay.
But at this time, no, the levels of service, what we provided, are increasing, not decreasing.
Thank you.
Okay, good. Any other questions on page 15? All right. Page 16.
Yeah, Jason here, John.
Go ahead, Jason.
Excuse us to Jim. I just seen here sick time says 16,000 in 2019 and 15,000 in 2020. Just wondering, that's sick days or?
Jim?
I think there's something else that we tag in there too, if I recall.
Just seemed to kind of jump out. Seemed to be a lot of time, but I didn't know if it was one person or a whole bunch or what. Like one person was off for a long time, or?
It's just wages that are going in there, Jim, so.
So that would probably be over your department?
Yeah, we did have a few people that were off a little bit longer. Would be short-term disability, possibly. But I would have to think back about those for sure, how they managed.
Okay. Any other questions about page 16?
One question here, John.
Sure.
Jim, I'm noting the winter main sidewalks. Given the increase in sidewalks in the Flato subdivisions, or indeed all of the subdivisions that are being developed, I'm not seeing a necessary increase in your operating for sidewalk maintenance. Is that somewhere else the increase, or what's going on there?
Go ahead, Jim.
There should be a level of the extra plow out there this year included, but those extra routes haven't been added in yet because we haven't assumed new subdivisions. We've only taken on sidewalks that we currently own and didn't plow in the past, but those will be reflected in years to come of more time that it will take for development to be serviced.
Right. Okay. Thank you. So I guess an extension to that then is there potential for revenue to plow those sidewalks for the Flato until we assume the subdivision, or does Flato do that themselves?
We have not tackled them as of yet. There are a little portion I noticed. I did a tour in around there this morning, and sidewalks were cleared pretty well from the north and south end, pretty well by 7:30, 8 o'clock, the majority. But they do a little bit of a extra because they're not turning around necessarily right at the old point as considered would be Elm Street. They go up and turn around at Hagen and then just come back out. But they are doing, in essence, a couple 100 meters of sidewalk that's not assumed just for logistics of turning. And same as we're doing Artemisia and Doyle up there now, but don't do internally to the developments. We have not had a discussion with developers about maintaining sidewalks at this time. It's all just been on the roads themselves. We haven't
Very good.
entertained.
Thank you. Okay. Thanks, Jim.
Dave?
Yeah, just on some of these items, and especially this one, it's best to compare 2021 budget with the projected number rather than the previous annual budget, because the projected basically demonstrates what we've actually done. Where I think we maybe anticipated taking on more sidewalk last year than we actually did.
Okay.
So, if I could, Mr. Chair, fair enough, Dave. Why then not budget 28,000 for sidewalk rather than the 45? Because I don't suppose we're going to take on the sidewalks before next winter. From
Jim's anticipation is that we will be, I believe.
Okay, all right.
Well, this is including having the second machine operating now out there, and these are wages that are covering those seasonals to do this job. So they're reflected in those budgets to cover them off without the additional new sidewalks. This is just additional existing sidewalks that we have projected since we got the machine early in 2021, the second machine. We basically didn't have it out on the streets. It's out on the streets now, though.
All right, thanks for the clarification.
Okay. Anything else on that page? Okay, we can move on to 17. Going once. Going twice. 18.
Jason here, John.
Go ahead, Jason.
Why don't we just sweep back to the last page here quick? I noticed the calcium, it's up going to be projected 18,000 up this year. Is that because it just got up in that much price, or are we? I just wondered about that. I see it took quite a jump, like from 19 to 22 or to 20 as well.
Okay, Jim?
Yeah, there has been expected cost increase for material for calcium application, and also considering turning some pavement back to gravel also will require that maintenance also to be there.
Okay, that's what I wondered.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? On to 18. Okay, 19. And 20. $21. 22. Oh, okay, 21, Barb, and then Michael.
I might just need to backtrack a little bit. I had a question about our transfer station with the increased, with all the new residents and increased traffic at the Dundalk transfer station and also for Egremont as well. How do we verify that someone isn't coming in from our neighboring municipality and using our transfer station and perhaps not paying the out of area fee? Like, are we implementing anything or going back to our procedures to start asking for proof of residence?
Jim?
Attendants have been instructed, again, if it's a new face, to definitely ask for identification. I know there was an instance where it was a possibility that a resident moved away and was observed at the transfer station. Apparently he's a seasonal. He does still have occupancy in Southgate. So anyhow, that's all been reiterated again to attendants, and that it was specifically also brought up in performance appraisals and documented. And once we head out of COVID, we may try to go into doing a check on people, but it's not the time other than a new face showing up. Is being requested.
Okay, Dave?
Okay.
Yeah, and further to that, we really, if they do show up and from another municipality, we really are not supposed to accept their waste, period. We only take waste at our landfill from our jurisdiction.
Yeah. Okay. Michael?
I'm just kind of wondering, when we look at waste here, I mean, it's really not maybe for this right now, but we got to think about the producer paid system coming up. At what point are we going to look at those numbers? I know it's 2023, it's 2 more years out, but it'll be here before we know it. We got any more information yet?
Jim?
We'll be crunching those numbers to go forward in the negotiation process. I have no idea right now of when negotiations will begin with those stakeholders. Just with some of the information coming out from Blue Box lately, our downtown businesses will not be reimbursed for Blue Box collection. That'll be on the township. Arenas will not be reimbursed as proposed regulation is right now. Or some of those park type spaces are still being discussed. But what I'm getting at is the services we provide right now to our as such commercial downtown businesses, the small shops and everything, they are not considered residential. They are not considered to be part of what producers have to pay back for collection of Blue Box materials.
Okay. Any other questions on waste, Dave?
Yeah, I think it's pertinent when we look at all these numbers, because last council meeting we had a discussion about that Blue Mountain report, and Jim's going to be bringing a report about that breakdown of our waste, and I think what we're going to do is we're going to show it likely by area of cost per household. And I want to take you to the second line, 01-3002. I doubt if a lot of other municipalities are carrying a debt load to pay for their infrastructure like we are. So there's $171,000 just in debt load. So that's quite a, when we eliminate that, that'll be quite a reduction in our cost. But anyway, I think we need to make sure we look at this whole budget and consider on a cost per household basis with the debt in, we are fairly comparable, I think, when the data gets wrung out.
Okay.
Just to provide that debt has a 5-year remaining. It comes due in 2021, and there would be 5 years that we would typically renew it for on the current schedule.
Okay.
Would that 5-year reduce the 171, or would it be about the same?
It would depend on interest rates. So right now, I would anticipate the interest rate to be slightly lower than what we're paying currently.
Okay. Any other questions on that? Waste.
Martin here, John.
Okay, Michael, and then Martin.
What you're saying is we got about $1 million more to pay for the Blue Box program, our garbage trucks and everything, and then we'll be clear of that, and then all our costs will go down then after that.
They would go down by that 171 for sure, yes.
Yeah.
What we may want to do when we renew that debt in 2021 is look at shoving some tax stabilization money towards it, just to kind of help wipe that out or reduce it. That would be a considerable savings on a household basis on this budget.
Thank you. Martin.
Yeah, through the chair. This is for Jim, I guess. Same page, line 013072, the recycling blue cart. It's going up the variance of 20. Is that basically the contract we have with waste management, or what is that involved with? Like, are there breakdowns with that amount?
Jim?
Those are our costs associated with disposal and of the recycling material at Waste Management.
Okay.
We do not have a contract with them. It's all at this point in time. That's why our ties are pretty loose with them. But they keep substantially increasing costs. And what I believe is happening is this is gearing them up for the negotiations with the producers to make sure that there's a cover on them, that they're making their profits.
Yep.
They went up quite a bit. Like, you know, a few years ago, we were paying about $5,000 a month for Blue Box disposal and MRF facility. Now we're somewhere in the neighborhood of $12,000 a month. They keep jacking the price on us.
Yep. I believe the price jacked up when we had on that trouble with China, and they never dropped it, did they? So, okay, that explains that. Thank you very much.
No, we did see another substantial increase here just within the last 4, 5, 6 months again from them.
Okay, thank you. Any other on the waste section here?
Jason here, John.
Yep. Go ahead, Jason.
Maybe it's back on page 20. Sorry, I just noticed a variance in the 21 budget for office was almost 30,000. Just wondered. Not sure who's that for, but
Jim?
I believe the wages allocated there were lower in Jim's 2021 budget than there was previously.
Okay.
Closer to projection, as you can see, he's projecting 253, so he's budgeted 260.
Sorry, down from the 290, so.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So that's actually a savings for us. Dave?
Is that really the right label on that to say office?
Probably not.
There's no doubt there is some what I would call burdened overhead that we do want to attach to this, because let's remember when we created this budget way back in 2003, we wanted to load it as heavy as we could, because anything that we could put in here that supported diversion got us more money and drove up that Waste Diverse Ontario contribution. So we would get somewhere in the order of 100 to 120,000 per year. And we were actually audited to justify these numbers. Now, I'm just wondering if maybe there's, I'm sure there is by the look of this, wages from other operations within waste tied into that office line. So I think we should get a better identification there.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions on waste? We'll move on to sanitary sewers. And that's pages 22 to 23. Barbara?
So sanitary sewers would be wastewater, or is that not part of, we've got water, wastewater, sanitary sewers, so that would be more of a Dundalk user paid, right?
Yeah, sanitary sewers is the same thing as wastewater, and that's Dundalk.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. There's no questions on that. We can move on to water. And just while you're looking through notes there for if there's any questions on water over the next couple of pages, we had our annual management meeting for the water system last week, I guess, and we went over our other annual meeting with the water staff. The amount of work that's involved in the water system, as far as reporting and paperwork and the systems we have in place, it's a really complicated issue, and our staff is doing a fantastic job on it. So, and our audits show that. Any questions on the water system? And that takes us through page 24 and 25. Michael?
Yeah, just in the water system there. I'm just kind of wondering, we budgeted for $295, and our actual projected budget for 2020 was $422,000. So, $127,000 over budgeted on that. I'm just kind of wondering what caused that.
Jim? Excuse me, Jim?
I'd have to look at specific detail, but we did have some repairs that we didn't necessarily anticipate. So those repairs were carried out on the system. But I'd have to have a better look at the detail.
Through the chair, if I might.
Yep, go ahead.
The main thing is the transfer to reserves. The surplus of the operating department gets transferred to reserves. So that's additional, that's the variance budgeted projected for 2020 is $143,000. So the department had more revenues than anticipated, so therefore the contribution to reserve was higher.
Okay. Any other questions on water? All right. So we're on to page 26, health services. Okay, and cemetery. It goes on that and the next page. Okay. We go to page 28 is recreation and culture. Any questions on that page? Okay, and on to page 29, Dundalk Recreation.
Martin here, John.
Go ahead, Martin.
Yeah, sorry, going back to 28, line number 014510, 39,850, is that wages? To Kevin or Liam?
Which line are you looking at, sorry?
Liam, I'm just looking at expenses on page 28, 014510. It says there's a variance of 39,850. Is that wages or is that broken down some other way?
That's probably the increase to capital. Just let me switch over here. Yeah, the transfer to reserve is increased by $29,000.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes. On Dundalk Recreation, any questions? Barbara?
I don't know if I'm reading it correctly, but it looks as though the Dundalk Recreation revenues and expenses equal. So Dundalk Recreation came in broke even. It's highly unusual for any recreation to not be a cost to the municipality. It's it's a necessary benefit, I would say, to the community. But it's showing that the net is zero.
So, Mr. Chair, if I might, that's another legacy because the Dundalk Recreation was brought in as Fund 4. So it's Fund 1 funds Fund 4.
Yeah.
So that's why Fund 4 comes to zero, and the net cost is in Fund 1.
Okay, I wondered about that. Thanks.
So
that's going to go away with your new GL.
Yeah, so essentially 5,000 revenues, that's essentially a transfer in from Fund 1.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right. And then we have Fund 6, Dundalk Arena.
Sorry, John, you got ahead of me there. Just to go back to the recreation, Dundalk Recreation.
Sure.
How many days was the pool open this summer? Roughly.
We opened, we opened it 1 week later than we normally did, so middle of June, and we stayed open July and August. So what's that, 8, 9, 10 weeks?
And was it open every day those 10 weeks?
Yep.
So $2,800 deficit on the pool every week. Would that be a fair statement?
2,820. Yep.
The net pool was 28,500.
Yeah, it loses about 26 to 30,000 a year. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'd hesitate to say lose, but it does cost us that. All right. Thank you.
Okay. So now we're on Dundalk Arena. Not hearing any questions on that. Although it does take a few pages here. Okay.
Just if I might, John,
sure.
Again to Kevin, given the impact that the pandemic has had on our operations on a variety of things, but particularly the arena, are you anticipating that the $6,000 variance budget to budget, is that going to cover the additional costs from balanced with the reduction in revenues? Is that, I mean, I'm thinking the pandemic's going to have a bigger impact on our arena numbers than what I see in the budget here, and I just, are you confident in those numbers?
It's a shot in the dark as we're getting closer to the end here of the year. Yeah, the arena's actually doing quite well. We're probably booked almost solid now with rentals, just because there's less for people to do, I assume. We're getting more family rentals, picking up kind of the dead spot. So by sitting to a month, I got to wait and see what the hydro bills come in if we save there. But yes, we sort of hope that some of the decisions we made outweighed what the loss was going to be in the end and maybe not be quite as drastic. The reason a lot of the deficit remains the same is on the end of the year is the fact that we do budget that deficit the same every year. Like the arena is going to lose 100,000 anyways this year, regardless. Kind of if we shut or closed, putting the ice in. So hopefully that $100,000 operating deficit that we budget for incorporates some of the loss on the COVID losses too, is what I'm hoping. If that makes sense.
Yep. No, that helps very much. Thank you. Thanks, Kevin.
Yeah, thanks. Any other questions about the arena? Barbara?
Through you to Kevin, I was just curious. Last year, we implemented the division of the ice surface so that someone could actually, a family or a small group of people could rent a portion of the ice. Are we still doing that in keeping in mind COVID and people coming and going? And if so, how's it working out?
Yes, Friday we started splitting the ice, and I was a little nervous over COVID, but the one group we do split is sort of the same family. It's brother-in-laws rent it, so they've kept their numbers down under the 24 combined. I've kind of dropped the drop-in down on that Friday, the shared ice, to less than sort of 10 on each side, and most of the guys have even been down. But yes, I tried it Friday. I got a little scared on it. So what I'm offering now is the dead times, or sort of know my dead times is before 5:30 Monday to Thursday. And I'm offering it out basically to try and just cover some wages in there at the $40 half ice price, but you're getting the whole ice just to get some families on the ice. So I'm off the record a little bit. Some of the charges I'm doing is creative here for some like single people coming in because of public skating. We can't do public skating. So people call, I'd say, hey, I'm here, come on in, use the ice, and they're leaving a donation of $20. So yes, there's a bit of cheating the fees and charges, if I can say that without getting fired. But
creative accounting.
Busy, but any groups that come in, the full 24 people, we're charging the prime rate. Any minor hockey group comes in, I'm charging the minor hockey rate, and basically I'm trying to get the non-prime rate for families. So I am using our fees and charges, but a little creative on trying to get people on the ice for public skating.
And through you, Mr. Chair, I think giving people the opportunity to get out of their houses and do something physical and active, even if it is within their family pod. Is there any way, just thinking creatively, and I'm sure you've probably already thought of options, is there any way to have those the split ice with two groups coming and going from different access points, or would that still be a concern? Because now you're putting more people in the arena, which we're restricted with anyway, aren't we? I think I just answered my own question.
Basically, but yeah, if I got two groups coming in, they're certainly separated from each other. They'll come in, one group will come in the main door, one group will come in the dressing room door. One group will use kind of half the lobby, whatever. But yes, everyone so far that's come in has said that what we're doing is probably as safe as they could possibly do.
Well, awesome, and kudos to you and your staff.
Any other questions on the arena? Okay. How about the library?
I had a question, but he's muted.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
All right. Yeah, not a question, just a comment to Kevin. You know, I was quite impressed when he said that off the record, you know, if he was there in the office and somebody phoned and they wanted to come in and skate for a half hour, whether it be a single person or a family, you know, that's awesome. That's what a community rink's all about. So again, kudos to that. And I'm glad everything's working out with all the protocols that you put in place, Kevin. It sounds great. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments on the arena before we move on? Okay. Library. Oh, Barb.
Through you to Liam, with regard to the library, I note that there's a blank line of $500, which I believe is the YAC support, the Youth Action Committee. And I was under the impression that that was being transferred to Recreation, and that might show up in your new GL. As long as that is YAC and it's being captured to continue to support them.
Yes, 4530 is YAC, and that needs to be moved to the recreation section.
Okay, and just to let you know that some of these funds to council were used for the Youth Action Committee to put in their very first float in the drive-through Santa Claus Parade. They created a Polar Express. They created it safely and with the support of Ethan and Crystal, and I think they had a lot of fun doing it and brought them together as a team. So, funds well spent.
Anything else on the library?
So they weren't railroaded? Is that what you're saying?
Maybe. Okay. Planning and economic development. It's on page 34. Any questions or comments on that? Okay. Page 35. We've got industrial land and agriculture.
So, Mr. Chair, judging by these numbers, and maybe this question is for Dave. We're confident that we're going to see some progress on that bypass road this coming year, like in terms of like real moving dirt and stuff.
That is the plan, to tender it in the first half of the year and hopefully get started in the second half. We're still waiting for designs to be finalized, and we've met on those a few times now. It's in Triton's hands, and we're just waiting for that to happen. And I think that's at the point where then we need to take a look as, do we tender it or do we act as a general and build it like we did the one part of Eco Parkway? It was a lot more, we did it a lot more fiscally responsibly, or fiscally, it was done much cheaper than the first half for sure.
Okay. Any other questions or comments on this? Go ahead, Brian.
Do you hear Seldom do you hear the words fiscally responsible and cheaper in the same sentence as planning. So, but we can be optimistic.
we can do it gooder.
More faster. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
John, Martin here.
Yes. Go ahead, Martin.
I guess this could go to Dave through the chair. Just clarification of what agriculture and reforestation involves. 01504. Is that pit reclamation or I don't know?
I'll stand corrected, but a fair bit of that is no. The tile drain loans are a separate item.
Yeah, that's why I wondered what that was.
I'm gonna throw it. There's not much reforestation, but agriculture. I'll throw it to Liam.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so 5721 tile drain loans, that's for new loans that people request. Agriculture reforestation, that's for the most part tile drain loans that we are collecting and remitting to the province. As well as the wildlife damage compensation claims and I believe beaver removal and things like that.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any other questions or comments? Okay. So that's that portion. Barbara?
Just since we're moving on to economic development, is the Butter Tarts and Buggies program completely? Has it been eliminated, that partnership? We're not anticipating there being any revenues from the membership, or is it just all expense?
So
there's no line number.
Yeah, so it's basically a dormant account. All the partners seem to want to exit, and that was when our EDO was vacant. So our interest has waned as well as everybody else's in that project, just because of the interest was not there from the community as well.
Right, the benefit to them of their investment wasn't paying them back.
Yeah, and one of the main leaders in Southgate, I mean, he had a new startup business that was needing his attention. He was the main,
of course,
spoker in the wheel. Yeah.
Thanks, Dave.
Okay. All right. Any more questions before we move on? Okay. Liam, where to next? Any?
That basically goes through all the operating budget items. So I think it comes back to a discussion of council of right now the overall increase is I believe it was 516,000, which is a 2.4% blended tax rate increase impact. And yes, 516,917, which is 2.4%. So, what is council? Does council have any comments with or something that is in the budget or not in the budget, and what they think of that increase?
Okay, Barbara.
I know this isn't the operating, but you do mention it in your staff report, Liam, about what you took out of the capital, and the capital affects that overall 2.4 blended target. When you took out the $1 million for the the administration building or the multi-purpose facility, and so those two buildings, when we were having that conversation, I suggested that it's not that we're not perhaps planning it for a future, 2 or 3 years out. Should we not be putting money into reserve as opposed to just wiping that line out completely in 2021? Because, we're not eliminating the concept forever. We're still going to have to come up with the money at some point. Is is it wise to not put any money into reserves for those projects?
And through the chair, I've pulled up I think I've called this attachment 2, which shows the changes that were made to the capital and special project numbers since last visited. So you'll see that we started at 2.304, which previously was reported with 2.05, which under the new blended calculations is actually 1.06. And the changes that Councillor Green mentioned there is on administration number 2, the $1 million build was removed, but you'll see a contribution to reserves of $40,630 was added. So I didn't, I did change the taxation back by $1,000 because of future year requirements, but so there is a contribution to reserves when that, rather than a requirement for taxation to actually build the project this year.
Okay, Barbara?
Just trying to keep up with you, Liam. You know these schedules backward. The contribution to reserves, then 530, and then there's another line for 40,000 and another line of negative 50 for under administration. So that, sorry,
okay,
can you just repeat your numbers again?
Yep. Okay, so under section 2 administration, the first 3 lines, administration building new, there was $1 million build in the budget, which was revised as 0 was taken out. So that's $1 million change. There was a contribution from reserves of $530,000, which was taken out. So that's a $530,000 increase for requirement for taxation. And then the debt that we were anticipating issuing for $430,000 was removed. So that's a $430,000 impact. So that's the removal of the build in 2021 and deferral to a future year. In its place, I put in a contribution to reserves of $40,630. So that's actually $1,000 higher than what that build was showing as a contribution from taxation. And that was done to ease the future year impacts by the deferral of that project.
40,000 doesn't seem very significant when you're talking $1 million for a build, right?
No, it's not.
And then it would be the same for the multi-purpose facility. All the ins and outs.
Yes, same approach was for the multi-purpose facility. With the 1, 2, 3, 4, like first 5 lines came out.
Yeah.
The contribution to reserve was increased by $6,900 because of that.
No, I'm just wondering if it's too late. Like, I know that the target was to get to, down to 2%, or, some said, 1, 1.5, 2 point, we're at 2.4 now. But are we doing a disservice to future taxation by being so light in the transfer to reserves today? That's a question, putting it out there.
Okay.
John?
Yeah, go ahead.
I would suggest that it's a good balance at this point between future considerations and immediate reality. I do share Councillor Rice's sentiment that there is a significant hurt from people in the municipality, but I do recognize that we can't starve our future needs either. We have to be responsible to both ends of the spectrum, and I think, and I commend Liam for his efforts to get us to this point. I think the current number, 2.4, is a reasonable, responsible number, and I thank him and indeed all the staff for getting us where we need to be, I think.
Agreed. Any other questions or comments?
Martin here, John.
Go ahead, Martin.
Yeah, Liam, when you mentioned the tax stabilization general reserve, that's item on the attachment 3. That's first item 2538. Reserve admin tax stabilization general fund, and there's a $1,066,000 in it.
Yes.
Okay. So you mentioned if we took 52,000 out of that to bring it down to 2, that is the figure we're obviously taking it from.
That's correct.
Okay. Well, I'm inclined to, 52,000 is the cost of the machine they want to use to heat up the tar mixture. So as long as we don't go below $1 million in that tax stabilization reserve right now, I'm all for that idea of taking that 52 out of there and applying it so we stay at a 2%. I think nobody could really grumble with that. I know as a taxpayer myself, like we all are, that is fair, especially as just Deputy Mayor Mills said, these are trying times. Who knows what's going to happen in 2 years? There might be grants coming out from everywhere to apply for a new building. So again, it's we don't know, but as of right now, would everybody on council think about that? Just a comment.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Oh, see if anyone else has, and then I'll come to Barb. Michael?
Yeah, I want to commend staff for doing a good job, but I think we can still dig a little bit farther here. I think we can still find some more money without digging into our reserves and keeping our reserves for down the road. Like if we go another 6 months at the current rate with COVID before we get a vaccine that we can get back to normal, I think we still need to save any money we can save. We can see that the arena is, hasn't lost any more money than they normally would do on a normal year. So, kudos to those guys out there for coming up with ways. But I think if every other department can do the same thing, I think we can still come in at a 0 without any problem. I mean, we're not that far off here. I mean, I look at everything that we took off this list from the capital side, and I mean, a lot of that was going to be debt anyway, that we weren't taking the money from today, we were taking money from down the road. So that money we can do at any given time. So I think we need to look at a couple of things. You mentioned the hot box. Well, we haven't had a hot box in how many years, how many days a year we're going to use it. So we take that 50,000 and put that towards, just to keep things going. So I don't know. I think we could do just a little bit more. I think we can get there. I look at every day in the paper or on another news article, some of the ones around us, what they're coming up with, 0.5 increase, 0, some are having a decrease. So I think, as a council and with the team that we have in that office out there, I'm pretty sure we can come up with a way that we can cut a little bit in each department. I'll leave that task to David to come up with, and his team, senior managers there to come up with a way of figuring this out that we can get to where we need to go.
Okay. Dave?
So I just want to talk, I don't want to pick on the hot box because Jim and I have had a lot of conversations about road maintenance and the changes he's making. And I think that's one of the most critical purchases that we need to make in 2021. Reason being is our coal mix that we've invested in 2020 was, I'm going to say, 3, 4, 5 times what we did previous years. And this is just on discussions Jim and I've had. He's crunching those numbers. But with that said, the coal mix isn't staying in. It's not lasting. And when we see the patches that are being made on the sides of the roads or in the wheel tracking areas with the hot mix material, it does stay even after being beaten all winter with snow blades and so on. So Jim and his staff really believe it's important to invest in that hot box to fix these potholes once and not 3 or 4 times during the year. But I'll get off that soapbox. We're also looking at doing maybe more spray patchy. But back to the core question of getting to 0%. Yeah, we can do that, and I think maintain levels of service by implementing the use of the tax stabilization reserve to get there, if that's what council wants to do. That's why we put it in place for bumps in the road like this, where we can maybe help maintain costs at previous year levels. The only danger that we need to recognize is that we are still implementing an operational increase in costs of 2.4%, if that's what we go with as is. Use the tax stabilization reserve to get it down to zero. But in 2022, we still have to find that contribution from tax stabilization, either again or increase taxes by 2.4 before we even look at a future increase in 2022. So I just want to share that caution of, we can make the math look good this year, but it may come at a price. And if we chop in other places, because I think staff have looked fairly hard already and made a lot of changes. If we cut further, we may impact levels of service in certain areas that we may not want to, because we have a lot of costs that are not in our control, like OPP and so on, that we can't chop there. So if we can't chop there, we got to take those increased bites and take it out of someplace else, and that's going to be level of service. There's no doubt about it.
Martin here, John.
Go ahead.
Jim or myself?
Jim. Jim?
I don't think we should get anywhere near that hot asphalt when it's properly applied just becomes a new piece of road. The coal patch gets lifted out with frost and any heavy traffic, so let's keep the hot box on the budget.
Yeah. Okay, and then Barb, then Martin.
Thanks. We still have the Public Works staff report to discuss some areas that that Jim has come forward with, things that could be deferred. But once again, we're just deferring the cost to another year. But it's worth going through that once we get to that. I'm not a big believer in taking from reserves to artificially lower a tax rate, because as Dave says, you still have to come up with it in the next year. But those are things to look at. Given the time, it's 11:08. I was wondering. I don't want to. Obviously, I'm not asking to cut the conversation short, but we still have a staff report. We still have a lot of discussing to do about what direction we're going to give staff. Maybe we should take a motion to move past noon just in case. And could we take a brief recess at some point when the conversation, it makes sense? I'm just making a request now. Thanks.
Okay, well, yeah, let's take a quick break when we finish this motion, and we can do the motion to move past when we still got 50 minutes, so we'll see that in a little bit. Was it Martin next?
Yeah. Okay. I just wanted to say I wasn't picking on the oven for the mix. It was just roughly around the same price as what the first option to get to 2%. It was the same monetary figure. I think that's going to be a good tool in the Department of Works for the next, however long it lasts, because it will save going out again and again and again. So I wasn't saying anything bad about that. It was just the monetary amount that it's not insignificant, but again, if we can take just the 52 to bring it down to that, and then whatever else happens as well, that was my point. I wasn't picking on anything as far as what is already probably going to be in the budget, I would think. So that's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you. Did anyone else have anything?
Jason here, John.
Go ahead, Jason.
I I guess I echo what Brian was saying. They've done a good job to bring it down, and maybe my zero was unrealistic, but I've been reading a bit from municipalities to the south of here. They're trying to do that, and I don't know. In my mind, I understand you are worried about taking from the future, but if you have nothing now, you're not going to have nothing in the future. I know that's a stupid analogy, but what is wrong with cutting some services? Government at all levels. It's they never cut a service very often. It's like a sacred thing if you cut a service, but it all comes back to there's one taxpayer, and I don't know. I just feel the hurt out there. People are talking every day, businesses, small businesses mostly, and I'd like to see us. I still think we can find a couple percent savings throughout this whole thing, more than we have, and I don't know what services to cut either, but sometimes I think maybe government are offering too many services. Everybody relies on the government too much. So no, that's just my opinion. I had to start out low, so we'll see where I end up. But I commend them for what they've done, but I would like to see it a little lower yet. Kind of on the back of what Mike said too. Just an opinion.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Okay. Just to kind of update everybody on some stuff I learned yesterday, and I was going to send out a note to all of council. I was updated on the delivery of the vaccine. It appears that the first phase of the vaccine will go to long-term care and healthcare workers in the closed and red zones in our province. Phase 2 won't be until April, and it'll continue on, and then phase 3 won't be till late next fall. So we're looking at this operating budget and capital budgets being in COVID type restrictions for this entire year. So just keep that in the back of your mind too. For myself, I've seen through my work what happens with the zero budgets and how much trouble it can cause down the road. I'm in favor of looking at our services and seeing if we are into too many things or what services could be reduced or cut. But I think if we do that, we've got to look at public input on that more, and that's more of a long-term strategy than it is a short-term. It's something that we have to have a really good look and in-depth talks about prior to budget time. So I think we're in the right spot myself. So we can go from there. If there's no more discussion on this part, we can take the vote and then move on to have a quick break and move on to Jim's report. So is there any other discussion on this? Is there anyone opposed to receiving this for information?
Point of order. Point of question.
Yep.
You're suggesting that the resolution is that there's two parts to the resolution, and it's the committee of whole recommend to council that Liam's staff report be received for information.
Yep.
As is. No changes, no recommendations.
Well,
part of his staff report is whether or not we want to consider reducing the rate further, take from state tax stabilization reserve. So I'm just asking for clarity. What are we voting on? Because we still have another staff report.
Yeah, we still have another staff report, and we're voting on receiving it for information, the committee of the whole, and we're voting on recommending it to council to receive for information, not to pass, to receive for information. And in our schedule, we've got another day, the 23rd of this month, to discuss the budget, of the operating budget and that as well. So,
Thank you.
Liam, as long as you have kind of enough of a feel for what council's said, I think we're good to move on. Unless there's a motion.
I agree. I think we've heard what staff, what council has. We've heard council members tell us what they think.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so is anyone opposed to the motion? I'll declare that passed. And we take a quick break before we move on. Is 5 minutes enough? Okay, so it's quarter past. At 20 after, we'll start up again with Jim's report. Okay, thank you. Okay, Lindsay, are you there?
Yep, I'm here.
We should probably do a roll call now, just make sure everybody's back, because I can only see a few.
Yep. So you're here, Deputy Mayor Milne? Brian's not quite back. Councillor Dobreen, I can see her. Councillor Frew, I can see you. Councillor Rice?
Yeah, I'm here. Yep.
Councillor Shearson, I can see you. Councillor Shipstead?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Milne? Brian's not quite back yet.
Okay. Well, we have quorum.
Yep.
So I think we'll get started. The next motion is seconded by Brian, so should.
Yeah, can someone else second that?
I will. Okay. Martin.
Thank you.
All right. So moved by Jim, seconded by Martin, and this is budget reconsiderations from Jim. Alice. So Jim, did you want to go over that with us?
Sure. There was some discussion about vehicles and equipment last go around about used versus new. I brought up some information here to give it a bit more detail and attention. The first one's a 2004 plow truck. That would be the next one for replacement due. As you can see, the 2020 costs do not include the fuel. That has not been assigned to each unit yet. It's been tracked, but it has not been assigned for the units, but I would imagine it'll be up in that range of the 20,000 again, for sure. You can see there are some other major repairs that had to be done over the years in 2018. It shows that. And, this truck's 16 years old. To get a truck, we, after the tender process, we can get through it. We're probably not looking to get a truck till late next fall, the way they're in line. What we do normally with these kind of trucks is pay for the chassis when it's ready up front. So that's, let's say, about half of it. And the rest of the equipment, we don't pay for that till we receive it. So buying something like this and being late in the year, and depending on how we're hearing production is, which is slow, we may only, if we proceed with this, may only have to pay for the chassis part in 2021, and basically by the time we receive the truck it could be 2022 is how some of these scenarios are painting out. The pickup that was on the list here is a two-wheel drive. I know Derek was interested in our next truck to go, but I don't believe the two wheels may be his choice for his department, but that is the one. I threw this report together quickly before off on vacation of there, so I pulled the numbers, but I went back because there was that anomaly with the 2019 of 10,000 for on 301 for repairs and maintenance and all the fuel and everything else. It appears that there was an extra set of tires that should have been allocated to another unit that possibly was reflected in a couple $1,000s there on that 2019. There was suspension work done on that truck in 2019. There was a question about how many pickups for the Public Works Department. We have 5 pickups currently, with the oldest being a 2007. And we basically are just keeping that in the lineup right now to distance people with COVID and having to do minor jobs such as sign repair or something. That one's based out of Holstein. 301's the next one, the 2010. 312 is a 2016. It's in Holstein for use, mostly by the lead hand there, but other employees too. But again, trying to limit people being in and out of vehicles. The 315 is a 2018. It is Phil's patrol truck. 316, which is the 2020 new truck, is in Dundalk. That gets used for winter patrol. As mentioned, Phil puts on about 50,000 kilometers a year. The patrol truck going out of Dundalk will have quite a few Ks added to it yearly. So, this pickup that's in line to go is 10 years old. I can tell you right now, we're going to spend $2,000 again here in the next week or two because the brakes are all gone on it. And again, knowing how our pickup went last year, we won't receive a pickup until August probably of 2022 because they're just not on the lots.
Okay. Barb?
So I was trying to follow along, and Jim's talking about different unit. I mean, I see the 3 in his staff comments, and there's there was no attachment. Is there, did I miss a schedule, or are you just reading something off, Jim?
I'm just giving you a verbal update on some of the other information because I said it was quick to timeline to push it out. And then I thought, well, of some other information, so I gathered some information to provide as a verbal update.
Thanks, Jim. I thought maybe I was missing something, but thank you.
And then the next slide item is a loader that's in Holstein. That's 1997. You can see we put some repairs into it for this year. The last set of loaders we bought 2 of them. They were used units. We would expect to get a used unit again for that 150,000 ballpark. Those were 2014, 2015 units. The last ones we just got for Hopeville and Waste Department, and they're good working units. So there are some units that you can buy like that type of equipment used, but as far as getting a used plow truck, I would say stay away from that. We're just asking for someone else's headaches and troubles. So also, what I've indicated here is that the second unit plow truck for Dundalk could be deferred. We haven't assumed most of those subdivisions yet. The Flauto West is coming here shortly, which is a short route, but we can get around town fairly decently. We do have the 550 that can handle light snow. It's the major snow that's going to come, or those really tough wet snows sometimes in April. There's going to be areas of town, generally it'll be the north end because we service the south because of the schools and the way our routes go, that we will have trouble with, especially with more development and roads to handle. But we could get another year, possibly, of not buying a single axle for Dundalk and putting it into service. I've also included here that we could defer the wet blade purchase. That's $50,000. We purchased the tractor to accommodate for a wet blade system. Again, going back to hearing about vegetation on the roadside, this would hopefully try to assist with that. But again, I would strongly recommend that we stay with the hot box to give that a whirl, because cold patch is not working. We can go to the same pothole twice a week if we want to, and have to sometimes, because it just is not working, and it's time to move on to something else. As Dave alluded to, our prices, we're going to be 2 or 3 times the budget that we've allowed for pavement patching this year, because the amount of supply and effort we put into it.
Okay, thank you. Any question, Barb?
Through the chair, Jim, that wet blade, can you just remind us the cost benefit of investing in the wet blade versus continuing to do what we're doing now? And are the ditches getting to a point now where you can't maintain them? And this will help resolve that? Will it take staff less effort, less time, less passes?
So
justify the 50,000.
The wet blade offers us the ability to apply a pesticide into the root system, depending on what we're trying to kind of fight. So we could be doing some of those applications that we're contracting out for some of that type of maybe like wild chervil or Phragmites. This doesn't necessarily do your grass cutting as such, but this will also cut down smaller shrubs that are coming along again, or growth of cedars or something like that are in a lower height stage than what we'd be using the brusher head for. Again, this is technology moving forward to help reduce the cost of maintenance overall. Yeah, some ditches are getting away a little bit on us, but some of that is due to the bigger trees, and that's what the brusher head would have to do. And obviously, it can't cut 2-foot diameter trees. It can limb them, but we can't fall them with that type of brusher head that we have. So that's kind of the equipment reconsideration that I brought forward. Again, with the discussions, I just wanted to reiterate and bring you the actual, be able to look at the years of these pieces of equipment. They've served some hard life with us already, and I think to try and keep the renewal of the fleet where it needs to be, I would suggest we keep going forward with the replacement of those units. Just to go on further about projects that could be looked at to be deferred, or some of them are on a list that, because of we're waiting other work to be done, and we're hearing that it's coming, but try and just to keep it in line for coordinating. And I'll go down through this list here. The Victoria Street pipe extension is south of Macaulay. That is something that former councillor Jack was always in favor of, trying to close in some of these ditches. We did some of that across from Victoria Apartments with some success. We've tried to put this in place and tried to work on doing some of that work, but this is not critical work. This is a project that can be shelved for a little bit longer. It's not critical. Croton parking lot.
Michael?
Well, wouldn't that project need to be done so we can get that sidewalk out to the school completed on that road? Wouldn't it make sense to do both of those?
The sidewalk is intended to go in. It's still on the list between Main Street and Macaulay.
So there will be some ditching and some pipe work to be done, but it's minimal. It's not big pipe like this drain is. That's just not quite adjacent to where the metal system entrance is, but close to it. And that ditch that runs in and around through what we call the former metal systems is actually ABS machining now. But that is, so these projects are not on the same side of the road, and they don't affect really one or the other.
Okay.
The Proton parking lot, again, we plugged this in thinking that the drugstore is happening, and once the excavation happens, we can carry on with the work there. So again, we put this on for work this year, but it may not happen this year. Stephen Pit 2, yeah, we're still waiting that license approval. That could be delayed. Again, waiting on that approval. Holstein Depot insulate walls, that's not mission critical either. That is tying in conjunction with our energy management plan for trying to be more efficient. So again, something like that can be deferred. It's not needed to be done right away. Holland Street pulverize and asphalt and a new stormwater system in there. Again, this has been on the roads needs study for a long time. It keeps getting deferred. It's not something, again, that's total mission critical. It's working. The road's still not broke up. In between that section, we do not have sanitary or water main, and we would not be looping into there. So it's basically top work other than storm drain, improving storm outlet on it and catch basins on the street itself. So again, not mission critical. The Golden Hagen Loop, again, we realize that's got some safety concerns for our trucks backing up and down those streets. But again, we're also waiting for the end of Gold Street takes developer his contribution to do some of the sanitary extension on Gold, and for storm water, that would be his. So again, we could do some of our work, but again, that could still be delayed also. And the Stonehill Road culvert replacement, that's pending at West Gray passes it through their budget. If they do not, then it falls to the wayside too. We will have to load restrict that road and or that bridge, I'm sorry. And like I mentioned, there is new development happening with somebody who's bought up in there. So that will limit how they're going to get supplies in there too. Do you wish me to carry on with the waste before entertaining some questions here?
Is there any questions on what we've covered, Jim's covered so far?
Yeah, Martin here, John.
Okay, Martin, and then I think it was Brian. Yep.
The chances, I guess this is all up in the air, but you said that $300,000 for the Stonehill Road culvert might be dropped depending on what West Gray says. Is there anything? Yeah, okay. The Proton parking lot, you were mentioning you would be looking at starting work on the parking lot after excavation. Is that just leveling off our ground while the excavator's there? Or? No, they need to have an excavator in to do their foundation work, and it would be sitting on our asphalt, and that would totally compromise the integrity of it. So yep. we have delayed doing that work till they get their foundation work in. As far as them trucking in building supplies, that's not going to be much of a concern, but definitely excavator track work on asphalt would be. Oh, definitely. So that is an item that could be shelved as well. Well, going on what Dave knows a little bit more, he said to plug it in the budget for this year. But again, if the drugstore doesn't come forward, then we're sitting the way we are again another year. Okay.
Brian?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jim, you mentioned there just at the end about the Stonehill Road culvert. You said there's some development pending. Is it on our side of the road or the West Gray side?
It's on our side.
Oh, okay.
The entrance went in last year.
Okay.
So has West Grey debated this particular item yet, or do you know, or?
I don't know. I sent this to their director back in September. I had to chase for an answer, and he said he was going to include it. That was only within the last month or so, but I don't know exactly. I don't know where they are in their process.
Okay, all right. Okay.
I know they have a lot of challenges like we do with some bridges, and I can see this not necessarily being a priority in their case.
Right. I just a general comment on all of these items. I don't see any issues with any of them coming out of the budget or being deferred, for that matter. If we're looking for savings, I think there's a significant amount of savings there to be had. So.
I just want to mention that I think Liam will agree that some of these are being debt financed. They're not being out of general taxation, and maybe he can take a better lead on that.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I just want to comment, yes, Jim's report, the comments about total cost of the project, not necessarily how the project was financed. So by cutting the project, you might just reduce your debt level or you type of thing. So I think that's what council needs to be aware of, is the total debt requirement in the roads in 2021 right now is $942,000. So it gets up to council whether or not they cut the project and the requirement for taxation, or cut the project and just cut the debt required.
So I guess the question then would be, Liam, if individual projects, then what is the actual taxation impact for these projects? I mean, I guess I could go back through the budget and find that, but do you have that?
So my approach when I prepared the budget, Jim gave me the list of the projects, and if they were carried forward. Long story short, I made the roads department have a 15% impact to the requirement for taxation overall. In order to achieve that, I used the existing reserves, and then I had, in order to fund the projects that Jim wanted in the budget, I had to use debt to get down to the 15%. So yes, I presented individual projects as required for taxation. However, that was by design to get you the 15%.
Okay. Thank you.
Dave?
So I think this is a timely place to talk about. I mean, it's fairly easy to cut road projects and just kick them off to another year, kick them off to another year. But we have to remember we have a roads needs study and a bridge study that tells us that we need to maintain our assets and do them on a timely basis. So, that's where that is in kind of conflict with a 0% increase. Although with that said, be careful what we hear from other jurisdictions. Some people are touting, yes, a 0% increase, but they all may be touting a 2 or 3% taxation to asset management catch up. So, we've not gone to that type of thing. I mean, anytime we cut taxes or try to get to zero, something has to be sacrificed. So that's just my diatribe on that issue.
Okay. Any other comments or questions on this?
One here, John.
Okay, Barbara, then Martin.
Barb first, yep.
Through the chair, I have heard from a couple of people over a period of time, with all this growth, we're still not seeing an increase in services and or a reduction in taxes. I get the fact that if it wasn't for the growth, we'd be looking at a 4.5% or a 5% increase, or even more than that. To your point, Mr. Chair, is if we're going to look at cutting services, we're going to need to have that discussion, before we get into budget discussions, and actually talk to our residents and find out what could could go by the wayside. As far as Public Works showing us what could be deferred, Dave's point, is we keep putting it off, and we do have a roads need study and we have a bridge study. But if you're looking at the Stevens Pit fencing, what is the likelihood of us getting that approved to move forward on? And yes, we need to have the fencing. Jim made a point before. We need to have the fencing in place before we can actually start pulling gravel, and we're less than a year out before we're going to be in need. So what's the balance of that? What is the benefit, the Holstein Depot installation? Is that going to save us a significant amount in heating costs? Is it going to give us more funding from our greenhouse gas emissions? Likelihood of Proton parking lot. Is the drugstore moving forward in 2021? Like, are they doing the thumbs up? And I guess my other question was about, where did it go? Sorry. 4 years since we actually submitted our amendment request. There's 30,000. It's unlikely, and even if we get the approval sometime in 2021, we don't necessarily have to start doing it right away. So that could go. You add up the Stevens Pit, the ministry approval, the $30,000 for race relocation, the Holstein Depot installation, the Proton parking lot, we've got 1% right there.
Okay. Any other comments or questions?
Just Martin here.
Oh yeah, Martin. Sorry.
Hey, no worries, man. No worries. My question was with the Holstein Depot, because it is an energy commitment. There is a timeline there. What's the timeline for getting all that work done, Jim? Could that be deferred for a couple of years, as you said, because it is trying to just keep the provincial government happy, and us again also with energy use? But could that be taken off for another year?
Yes, absolutely. There's no ties with our energy plan and commitment. We're striving to do better, but there's no ties that it has to be done. We made a big accomplishment with getting rid of the oil-fired furnace unit that was in there and went to propane. That gave us a lot of greenhouse gas bonus points there, but this is costs that would be in energy savings would be realized for the building in the long run, but it's not something, again, mission critical.
Okay, thanks for that. I thought there was a little bit of a protocol for that energy conservation idea. So no, that's good then. So that could be definitely one that could be taken off.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, Dave.
So with Councillor DeBreen's comments and I'll talk about Councillor Shipson's comments as well. There's a lot to unpack there, because I want to go back, I think, to the start where people not seeing increased levels of service, but I'll challenge you that we are getting a lot of new driveways that we're going past. That's an increased level of service. We've increased sidewalk budget to do that as well. So I think we have to be defensive of that question, because we are increasing levels of service. We're increasing building and services. I mean, that's self-funded, but those are additional services to try and keep up. The other piece about the Stevens Pit, Jim and I haven't had a chance to talk about this, but I actually had a meeting late last week, finally, with Ministry of Natural Resources. And when I got the opportunity, I didn't want to wait or give up that space. But that was one of the most frustrating meetings I've ever attended with anyone. But it was almost a waste of time. And when I came away from that meeting, is that we need to take charge of this thing. and create a resolution on our own. They made the comment that it would be at least another year or more to finalize cumulative impact study, which they've been working on for likely close to 3 years now. So, anyway, again, very frustrating meeting. I think we need to just take part of this thing and start our own discussions again with them with Son, and bring this thing to a conclusion.
Yeah, I think that's got to be a priority.
When it comes to, I want to talk about this whole investment in we need to do it sometime. We just can't let wind blow in through a building and out the other side. I mean, maybe it's not that bad, but insulation is a good investment that will cut your costs long term as far as energy and so on. So, maybe putting it off another year is okay, but we need to address that issue too, because we've made those investments in Hopeville, and these buildings were constructed 30, 40 years ago, and sure doesn't have the insulation that would help with the energy efficiency that we need today. And I may have missed some questions, so I'll maybe ask for a recall if somebody brings up.
Yeah.
Was there anything I missed there, Councillor DeBreen?
Oh, actually, you make some good points, and I actually wanted to, or my thought was, if we're redoing the Holstein office, council chambers construction, maybe the insulation will come in with that anyway. I hear what. Yeah, thank you for updating us on the Stevens Pit discussion with MNRF, and maybe that. Maybe the minister delegation at some point with regard to the ministry approval of our EA amendment could be, something that we could apply for at some future Roma Ogre. I think we might have missed the Roma deadline, but AMO, because I mean, come on, it's like it's got to be 3-4 years. Anyway, that's just me.
I want to.
Okay. No, the other.
Can I reply to that for a second?
Yeah.
My dealings with MNRF on this specific issue is even we're wasting our breath to talk anything about it with the ministry, because they are doing nothing. I mean, I'm not even voicing how concerned, pissed off I was after that meeting. It was ridiculous that we are paying. Anyway, I'm going to shut up now.
Mr. Chair, I agree with. And we were talking about the Highway 10 bypass. I mean, with the stroke of a minister's order, they can go and develop wetland now because they passed the Schedule 6 in Bill 229. So. They can override anything with a stroke of a pen. So maybe we should just go ahead and do it. Beg forgiveness later.
Just before we do any more, we'll have to have a motion to go past noon now. So if somebody would like to move that and second it? Barbara and
I will,
Michael?
John, Jason.
Okay. Anyone opposed to that? Okay, and that's carried. So we can continue with what we're doing then. Any other comments on cutting some of these things, or all of them? Michael?
Jason here, John.
Oh, Jason.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. That's fine.
Yep. Michael, Jason, Jim's got comments too.
We look at these numbers, and yet we're not sure how much that will change our tax dollars, because we're not sure how much of it was going to be funded by debt. But at the same token, instead of us reaching into a reserve to get our balance where we want to be, we can also, at any point in time, if we see one of these projects come back on the radar that something does go through that we need to do that, we can go then and get the money that we need for that project, even though we shelved it for now.
Okay. Jason and then Jim.
I commend Jim here for these different projects. It looks pretty decent. Guess I'll kind of run through them maybe quick. Like the Victoria Street drain pipe. Is that just basically filling a ditch in? Did you say, Jim?
That is putting pipe in. That's I might be alluded of the size. It's 2.2, or it's a fair size pipe that would be extended, and that would take it just to where. Again, I'm going to call it metal systems, to just where it kind of bends to go in front of metal systems is all this, and then fill it, and have a swale still on top. And the only thing is, I do have already a GRCA permit to do the work, and I think it runs out sometime in 2022. We'd have to reapply it, and we'd lose our $400 or $800 for the permit.
Okay. Then the parking lot, as far as I am concerned, there's no, if there's going to be excavation, like you said, there is going to be, and digging. That thing might as well be at gravel until that drugstore is up and running, and do it afterwards. That'd be the best. As far as the pit, Dave kind of brought it up. I think I've had a few discussions with people, the elephant's in the room, what we need to do, let's get on with that. And anyway, I just like some of these savings he looked at. As far as the roads, Holland Street and the Golden Loop, Jim knows more about that, whether that's something we can put off, but some of the top ones, I would say that's good. The Stonehill Road culvert, so if you have to reduce that bridge, that's the only way in?
Yes. One way.
Okay. That's what I thought.
And in the wetland.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay.
Okay.
I guess I could one more, John.
Sure. No, go ahead, Jason.
Well, I guess it's to Dave, and it's coming back to the pit. Can we just put it out there? What do we got to do to get this thing going, Dave?
Sorry. Write a check.
So why don't we write it then?
Yeah.
The big deal now is to determine how much it is. So that's where Jim and I have to talk to our legal counsel and actually have a meeting with Son and start those discussions and negotiations.
Yeah. And like I said, I think that should be a priority.
Yeah, that to me, that's a priority that we need to set up a meeting for January with them and have those discussions.
Yeah.
I think the county might be of some assistance there, maybe. Maybe talk to CEO Wingrove and see what her thoughts are on what we're proposing.
Yeah, I've got a meeting coming up with her on that whole waste costing and the GTR and so on. So yeah, we'll put it on the list.
Well, in talking, hearing those comments, we better leave that 30,000 in there because it's going to take all of that.
Yeah. Yep.
It'll just have different words behind its place, Walter.
Okay. Barb?
So to that point, there should be an earmark for some dollars, legal, whatever, however that's done, and I'm being very careful as to what I say because it's for discussion later. To Jim, your point about Grand River Conservation Authority and the permit and expiration, oftentimes I know that SPCA, you can get an extension. You just have to let them know that due to unforeseen circumstances, it is being delayed. We're waiting for something else. I think the parking lot, it's safe to say that we don't need to do that this year. And I think it's probably safe to say that we won't be moving cell number 1. So there's 30,000. So there's 110,000.
Yeah. Okay. Anyone else have comments? Jim?
Yeah, so in the waste resources diversion department there, we reduced one new roll-off bin that would be $8,500 to, we would just get one new one for next year. I just want to go down. I don't know if anyone caught it because sometimes the community action plan gets glazed a little bit. But goal number 5, upgrading hard surfaces, it includes all of them. And at the bottom, I noted that these strategic initiatives may not be in line with these budget reconsiderations. And on that note too, I know in the past, it's always Public Works, it's always TAPS that takes the hits. And it's frustrating. Other departments also need to get some numbers crunched, I think.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions?
Jason here, John.
Yep.
I guess this is to Liam or Dave, I would say. So we've talked about our 2.4% increase. So if we don't increase our services and we do raise our taxes 2.4%, somebody said we'll go backwards. How will we go backwards if we don't increase services but we raise the taxes?
No,
if we try to save 2 or 3% across all departments.
So the reason for that comment is more of a financial reason than it is a service reason. Fine, if we cut back the service, but if we go to a 0% increase and try and maintain the service is where I'm getting at. So we're really going to try and support a 2.4% increase, but reduce the taxation levels to 0 by subsidizing from tax stabilization. Once you've established those services at that level, then that cost at 2.4% above 2020 budget in 2021, that service is still being delivered. So when we hit 2022 and try to deliver those same services, we're now 2.4% of non-tax money we got to find again. So really, before we start the 2022 budget, we got a 2.4% unfunded tax increase before we would start looking at increased costs of 2022 is the message we're trying to deliver there.
Okay, and I think the other thing we have to remember when we're talking about the budget increases is things that are downloaded through legislation, like our having to have the asset management plan, and now
I think John's gone.
Yep.
John has left the building.
Yeah, until he comes back, I just want to supplement what I said, is there may be creative ways to go to 0 and still do those projects that would be one time. Insulation of the Holstein Works Garage would be a one-time expense. We're not going to do it in 2022 and 2023. The hot box would be a one-time expense. Those kind of things, if we can pick them off and subsidize that with the $2.4 from tax stabilization, then you could mitigate that 2022 impact of budgeting. But you'd have to find capital projects that would be one time, that we can justify, that we could put into that 2.4% window of money, and then know that going into 2022, we're going with the same dollars.
Well, that's kind of what I was getting at all along. Like, I understand what you're saying with the tax stabilization, but isn't there enough projects we could find to mitigate that? Yeah.
And let staff take a run at that and come back with a report for the 23rd of what some of those projects could be.
You know, because I'm not being a doomsdayer, but if this COVID thing stays around, who knows, next year maybe nobody will be able to pay their taxes. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying?
Well, John's email that he sent in the discussion this morning about COVID, boy, I'm not sure. Like John mentioned it, but we could be wearing masks at Christmas next year.
Yeah, absolutely. They didn't paint a great picture on getting all the vaccines and getting them distributed. Any other questions or comments? Brian?
Thanks, John. Just quickly in that vein, I see this morning the province has announced that Pfizer has been their vaccine has been approved by Health Canada. So the Minister of Health claims that they're ready to roll it out as soon as they start getting the actual vaccines in their hands. Anyway, to Jim Ellis's point regarding roads seemingly always taking the hit. Fair enough. But being the largest item in the budget by far, that is just naturally where that's going to happen. And I don't disagree that, other departments need to sharpen the pencil, so to speak. But the potential to sharpen the pencil in the other departments is limited by just literally the size of their budgets. To not pick on anything in particular, but where do you find savings at the pool, for instance? I mean, the pool costs us $30,000 a year to run for 10 weeks. In my mind, that's a very poor return financially, but in terms of value to the community, it's well spent money. So I guess I keep coming back to the roads again, and my thing with the roads is we invest money to build or rebuild various pieces of asset, and then we seemingly just ignore them for 25 or 30 years. We let the brush and stuff grow up around the sides of the roads. We don't deal with it, and we've got to deal with that stuff. So I am very pleased to see that Jim has proposed an investment in more maintenance of our road assets rather than more building of assets. And I think that in the long term will serve us very well. So anyway, those are my comments. Thank you.
Agreed. Any further comments? Michael?
I just want to piggyback onto what Brian is saying there, that maybe it is the roads that we're picking on, it seems like, to the most part, but we're really not picking on him. I'm putting the challenge out there to all of the managers out there, all the departments, to look for it. Cutting the grass at the ballpark every 2 weeks instead of every week, there's a savings right there. Do we need to cut the grass in Holstein, every week out there? Could it go every 2 weeks? Like, is there a way that we can save money somewhere else? We had a building out there now. When did the bank move out? Try to rent that building out at Holstein, like it's sitting there empty. Like, there's other ways that we can be looking at trying to find ways of making money or saving money in all departments. As I said, we have to leave it in their people's hands as the managers of each one of the departments, like Jim, to come up with suggestions and ideas. As I said, we don't want to cut services. We want to keep everything going forward, but just ways that we can tweak here and there just to help out during this pandemic. If it's going to be another year, we're going to lose a lot of small businesses and a lot of jobs. So we need to make sure that we're looking after all the residents here in Dundalk.
Yep. Okay. So shall we move on?
I just give a quick question to Jim, John.
Sure.
It's kind of out there in left field, maybe, Jim, but we've talked about downtown improvements and giving them tax breaks and stuff, and it's probably been brought up before. The way the ditches are in different, in the shape they're in, is there anything where you could knock $100 off somebody's tax bill if they clear all their ditches in front of their farm property or their big, their large property? And I'm not saying a lot. It's just something to put out there. Like, I'm not saying I myself, we keep the ditches all cut. Lots of people do. You cut down on snow removal, you cut down on everything. Is there anything like that, or have we ever tried something like that?
Jim?
Not to my knowledge. We would have to have some more research and discussion to look into something like that. I'm not aware of anyone else really doing that, but I guess it's a possibility.
Okay. Okay, well, if there's nothing else, then is there anyone opposed to us receiving this for information? And we've given staff some things to look into already. Okay, hearing no one opposed, I'll declare that passed. And now I have a motion moved by Michael, seconded by Jason, that we move back into council meeting. Any discussion? Is anyone opposed to that? Okay, so we're back in at 12:10. There's a couple of motions. 9.1, which is moved by Barbara, seconded by Martin. And that's be it resolved, the council receives the staff report 2020-036, the 2021 budget as information. Any further discussion on that? Okay, anyone opposed to that? Declare that passed. 9.2, budget reconsiderations, moved by Jason, seconded by Brian. And that's that council receives staff report PW 2020-059 for information, and that we direct staff on budget reconsiderations. Any more discussion on that? Okay, anyone opposed to that? We have confirming bylaw. I'll declare that passed. Sorry. Well, confirming bylaw moved by Michael, seconded by Martin. And that's the bylaw. I'll let you do that, Lindsay.
Thanks, Mayor Woodbury. So recorded vote called for the confirming bylaw. Councillor Dobreen?
Yes.
Councillor Shearson?
Yes.
Councillor Frew?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Milne?
Yay.
Mayor Woodbury?
Yes.
Councillor Rice?
Yes.
Councillor Shipston?
Yes.
By a vote of 7-0, that's carried.
Great. Thanks very much, Lindsay. So just before we move on to, I'm going to not even call it adjournment anymore. I'm just going to call it, before we move on to Brian's motion. I'd just like to thank staff and council for all your work and ideas on this. I think this is one of the most robust budget discussions I've been involved with on council in these last few years, and I think we're getting a lot of good ideas around and a lot of good work in. We just have to, let's say, make sure that we're not going backwards anywhere. So, and it's given us ideas for next year on looking at levels of service and different other things early in the year, so that we can decide on things needed. So thank you very much. I have the Milne motion to adjourn, moved by Brian. Is anyone opposed to that? That is carried. Again, thanks to everybody.